Serial killers during wartime. Are you one of those weirdos who think serial killers are just fascinating? Us too. Turns out quite a few use wartime chaos and blackouts to commit their crimes. But these killers have flown under the radar in history due to all the other stuff going on at the time. So we thought they deserved their own spotlight. Let's take a look at these two guys and one lady who used the backdrop of war to commit horrific atrocities. Gordon Frederick Cummins. The Blackout Rip. Gordon Cummins was a young, attractive RAF airman with a superiority complex and a predilection for working girls. Despite his working-class roots, Cummins adopted an affected accent after entering the RAF in the mid-1930s, earning himself the nickname the Duke. But behind his charismatic exterior was a dark, murderous sexual drive that much later earned him the title, the Blackout Ripper. It was February 1942 and London was in the middle of the Blitz. Air raid shelters littered the country and the bright lights of the West End were switched off, providing plenty of dark corners to hide violent crimes. Which is why, on February 9th, electrician Harold Batchelor found the body of 41-year-old Evelyn Hamilton outside an air raid shelter entrance. A stranger to the city, Hamilton's murder left police with no leads, unaware the killer was just getting started. 6 days later, 3 more women were dead, and London had a new serial killer for its history books. Hamilton was just the warm-up. Evelyn Oatley, a nightclub hostess, was found in her flat on Wardour Street, throat slashed and body mutilated. Margaret Lowe, nicknamed the Lady for her posh demeanor, was disemboweled in her home. Finally, Doris Uinette was strangled with the stalking her body discovered by her husband. It was then the police realized they had a serial killer on their hands. But Cummins was already on the lookout for his next opportunity, charming Margaret Haywood at a bar. He soon guided her down unlit streets before attacking her in a doorway as she desperately tried to fight him off. Luckily, 18-year-old John Shine came to investigate the disturbance, and Cummins bolted, leaving an incriminating clue behind his RAF gas mask. Undeterred and still eager to kill, Cummins attempted another attack later that night at the home of Catherine Mulcahy. But she fought him off and ran for her neighbors, screaming for help. Both watched in confusion and horror as Cummins stumbled around her flat while muttering about drinking too much, and finally giving her 8 one-pound notes in an apparent attempt to buy her silence. Then he visited another bar, where he secretly pocketed another man's RAF mask, intending to tell the police that they had been swapped accidentally. But Cummins' rampage had left a trail of evidence that the police were piecing together. In leaving his gas mask, Cummins had given them their prime suspect. Further investigation found several victims' items in his quarters, and serial numbers from his pay packet matched money given to Mulcahy. Finally, after a week of terror, Cummins was arrested on Valentine's Day 1942. He was later found guilty of all 4 murders and later came to be accused of 2 more. But he would never learn of this, as on June 25, 1942, Gordon Frederick Cummins, the Blackout Ripper, was executed by a hanging. The soap maker of Correggio, Leonardo Cianciulli, was reportedly disturbed from childhood, showing signs of extreme mental illness from a young age. Married to a government clerk during World War I. The couple later moved to Correggio, where Cianciulli's already spiraling mind would have deadly consequences. You see, years earlier, a fortune teller had given her a dark prophecy. You will have many children, but they will all die young. Sadly, this prediction seemed accurate. Out of 17 pregnancies, only 4 children survived, fueling an obsession and fear of losing them that consumed Cianciulli. So when World War II hit in 1939, and her son Giuseppe was conscripted, Cianciulli was determined to ensure he returned alive. Working as a fortune teller and matchmaker, she devised a deadly plan, believing there was only one way to keep her son safe: human sacrifice. Her first victim was a woman she had found a match for in the distant province of Pola. 50-year-old Faustina Setti was hopeful when she knocked on Cianciulli's door that day, ready to give her life savings to the matchmaker to find a mate. What she found instead was the end of Cianciulli's axe. Offering Setti a glass of drugged wine, Cianciulli waited before picking up her weapon, chopping the poor woman into 9 pieces and draining her blood. But now, Cianciulli had a body to deal with. Forcing appendages into pots alongside her special recipe of alum rosin and 10 pounds of caustic soda, she proceeded to boil everything down until, according to her own testimony, the pieces dissolved in a thick, dark mush that I poured into several buckets and emptied in a nearby septic tank. Then, with a leaf straight out of Sweeney Todd's book, Cianciulli took the coagulated blood, mixing it into her crunchy tea cakes to feed her friends and Giuseppe. However, Cianciulli wasn't done. Her next victim, Francesca Soavi, came to Cianciulli, believing she had a job offer for her. Then, Iron Soprano was lured under the promise of employment. Cianciulli didn't get another shot at ensuring her son's safety during the war. Cassiopo's sister-in-law soon reported her absence and last known location, Cianciulli. The police raided her soap-filled home, and Cianciulli confessed immediately, claiming she would do it again to protect her son. She was subsequently sentenced to 3 years in a criminal hospital and 30 years in prison, where she died of cerebral apoplexy and was turned into soap. Just kidding about that last part. Dr. Satan Marcel Pétiot in Nazi-occupied France, 1944, another murderous activities were about to come to light. Meet Dr. Marcel Pétiot, deemed mentally unwell from a young age. He was expelled multiple times and later charged with damaging public property and mail theft, but deemed mentally unfit to stand trial. Yet despite his obvious issues, Pétiot was still called to fight for his country when World War I broke out. By 1916, he was on the front lines. Over the next 2 years, Pétiot suffered multiple nervous breakdowns and psychiatric unit stents, culminating in shooting himself in the foot. He left the army, getting his medical degree in 1921. When World War II erupted, Pétiot joined the French resistance, the perfect cover for his crimes. It began with addicts, working girls, desperate people. They would visit Pétiot and disappear. But under the guise of aiding those fleeing Nazi persecution, Pétiot had new targets. Offering safe passage to Argentina, he became a port in the storm, but one that dragged under those who rested there. Pétiot operated unchecked until 1944, when on March 11th, a disgusting stench and smoke started to pour from the windows of his home near Paris's Étoile district. The French police were called, and upon entering the property, were thrust into a scene straight from a horror film. Water! Discarded belongings, blood-stained tools, disturbing contraptions, and body parts marked each room as a torture chamber. In the basement sat 2 coal stoves, one with human remains still inside. In the stables, a pit was filled with countless unmatched body parts, hastily drowned in quicklime. The number was impossible to gauge, but interestingly, their dismemberment held an uncanny resemblance to a string of bodies that had been dumped in the Seine 2 years earlier. The police were outside, still reeling, when Petiot appeared. Identifying as his brother, he told them, "The bodies you have seen are those of Germans and traitors to our country. I am the head of a resistance group, and I have 300 files at my home, which must be destroyed before the enemy finds." It was this and general mistrust of the Nazi occupiers that made the French police less than inclined to hunt down Petiot. Believing his deeds to be intertwined with genuine resistance activity, they did everything they could to delay. They hedged and hesitated, following unimportant leads and tracing down old property owners, giving Petiot plenty of time to flee before following his trail. As a result, Petiot evaded capture, leading forces on a merry jaunt across France. But by April 1944, Petiot's collaborators, including his wife and brother, had been arrested. Eventually, Petiot was traced back to Paris, where he too was arrested. Throughout the trial, the murderous doctor maintained his innocence and attributed his deeds to resistance activity, claiming he was only responsible for killing 19 Germans and collaborators. But there were at least 27 bodies which, according to Petiot, were the work of other resistance fighters. The jury was unconvinced, sentencing Marcel Petiot to death for the murder of 26, though the true number was undoubtedly higher. In May 1946, the resistance doctor was executed by guillotine, smiling the entire time.